The number of Americans who belong to labor unions has been dropping for decades. But suddenly, in the last year or so, the winds have changed.
From Hollywood sets to snack factories, to heavy equipment makers, to hospitals, employees across industries are taking a stand. US organized labor is having a moment after decades of erosion in both influence and power, giving workers opportunity to barter for more pay and benefits.
Labor is big in the US right now, with support for labor unions the highest it's been in 57 years. I'm Yasmin Khan with Rebel HQ, and this probably isn't surprising given the wave of unionizing attempts we've seen, some successful, some less so, across the country. Now, according to a recent Gallup poll, 71% of Americans approve of labor unions, a 3-point increase from last year and a 7-point increase from before the pandemic. The highest polling was recorded in 1965, when approximately 75% of Americans supported labor unions. Now, this could probably be taken as supportive of another recent poll that found Bernie Sanders, a progressive politician who has made a career of fighting for labor rights, to be the most popular potential presidential candidate for the 2024 election. And while he may have been late to the party, President Joe Biden is actively appealing to workers, acknowledging that they're the ones who have built America. They're the ones running its economy, and they're the ones bearing the brunt of the risk of a capitalistic, monopolistic, and let's say, problematically democratic society. And meanwhile, on the other side of the aisle, we have trust fund and Ivy League educated politicians disparaging the work ethic and overall value of workers in society, some going so far as demeaning people who work in coffee shops, even though, one, they're working, and two, they're working within the very unique circumstances of their lives. Now, I don't know why Ted Cruz thinks that he understands the lives of the people that he chooses to criticize, especially when his assessment of them is incredibly degrading and dismissive. But he also seems devoid of any concern that the same people he's insulting can and probably will vote him out of office. Of course, this speaks to generational misunderstandings, the polarization of political topics that eliminate the individual and reduce them to stereotypes, or the dumbing down of a society that relies on 60-second TikToks to convey ideas and educate on topics that actually require extensive study to grasp and understand. But above all of that, it's the politicization of people's lives. It's telling lies and constructing a narrative that is easily digested by people who want to just sit back and not worry about the plights of others, even if those plights are the direct result of a society that's been deliberately constructed by those who are profiting off of the work of others. For business leaders and politicians to be anti-workers, it's obviously selfish, but it's also incredibly short-sighted. Mark Cuban, a billionaire, even acknowledged that wealth inequality and wide class disparities are bad for business and bad for capitalism. How is society expected to function if the majority of people can't function within it? In brief, it can't function. Societal inequality is bad for everyone, including the people who most benefited and profited from it. We have billionaires and architects of industry who are building underground bunkers so that they can escape the inevitable societal collapse and planetary destruction that they knowingly and unapologetically brought forth and inflicted on an entire global population. Many of the issues we're facing today can be directly linked to capitalism and industry, growth for the sake of growth, and more for the sake of more. But another factor can be the individualistic nature of life in the United States over the collectivism that you tend to find in other cultures. There's a pervasive every man for himself mentality here that permeates and guides our decision-making, especially in decisions surrounding our money and our jobs. In hierarchical business structures, that decision-making power is held at the very top, often by one person or a handful of elevated board members. Still, what they say is usually what goes, and the people below them, the workers, are made to live with whatever decisions are made on their behalf. Of course, those decisions aren't made in their interest. They're made in the best interest of the stakeholders and the bottom line. It's justified, though, because worst case scenario, the workers always have the option to leave, right? For example, an NPR article discussed 2 independent coffee shops that faced unionization. Full disclosure, the article was relatively unbiased, but it did seem to lean a little bit anti-union. Now, one of the business owners, when his workers proposed the idea of unionizing to him, he sat and listened to his workers and implemented the changes that they asked for. His workers ended up not unionizing. The other fought his workers in their efforts, and much to his disdain, they eventually unionized. Within the article, he expressed concern that an annual raise of 50 cents per worker would be more than the business could afford, despite the fact that that's a more than reasonable expectation for workers, and despite the fact that his local shop had grown into a local chain. He also lamented the reasons why he got into business in the first place, so that he could do what he wanted to do. He could run a business the way he best saw fit. He could make all the decisions and be the guy in charge. The irony was that he so wanted his own business because he had worked for a larger company and didn't like the way things were being done. Instead of being on the side of the workers and leading with empathy for their struggles that he had probably experienced firsthand in his former life, he sought to stifle their voices and operate his business despite their needs and wishes. The problem there is that you can't run a business without people. It's the fallacy of the benevolent dictator, because as you're dictating your needs and wants on a population, even while convincing them that it's for their benefit, you're still a mean old dictator who thinks he knows what's best for everyone. And as much as people are a part of any business, they're so often treated as an inconvenience in the process of actually doing business. When profits are prioritized and workers are exploited to increase those profits, without some sort of input from the workers, business leaders are free to push boundaries with their workers, knowing that they have the full support of the capitalistic government behind them. The notion that workers can simply work somewhere else if they don't like the conditions at one company is also an insufficient solution, when our nation's minimum wage is still lagging so far behind inflation and the cost of living. It's no longer a livable wage. If everyone is offering an obsolete minimum wage for similar positions, it's not exactly the competitive capitalistic environment that we've been told this whole system thrives on. And capitalism is only remotely sustainable with competition, but when antitrust laws remain unenforced and when widening inequality gaps become more and more formidable and sinister, competition is nearly non-existent, at least in any meaningful way. And sure, there are a few brave pioneers who have both the resources and the compassion to offer more to their workers, but they're few and far between, and unfortunately, they're hardly any match for the Amazons and the Starbucks of the world. Increasing support for labor unions in this country is the natural product of the society that we've built for ourselves, just as wealth inequality is the natural product of unchecked capitalism. A disenfranchised working class is bad news for everyone. But if workers can rally their support and their collective power effectively, it could help push things in the right direction. All right, that's it for me. Please like and subscribe if you got anything out of this content, and be sure to follow me over on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks for being here.